Welcome everyone to leveraging GitLab and DDEV, and we'll be talking about a few more other things, but basically that's our main open source tools that we are using to create projects. Who here is already using GitLab self-hosted or GitLab just great? And DDEV, almost the same crowd. Anyone using Lando? Okay, I think there's a few people that use both, so well done. So let's start by, I'm working at 1x Internet, where Buddy is also working. I'm going to take revenge on her for, for calling me out so many times during her talk. So we're 65, did I put 60? Yeah, we're 65 people currently spread out around Europe, a few in Spain, a lot of us in Germany, many distributed, Hungary, Iceland, and some other places. So myself, I'm jcnventura. I've been working with Drupal since a long, long time ago. I was born in Faro, Portugal, nowadays living near Darmstadt, and working to the office in Frankfurt. As it says there, I'm a senior backend at 1x. I helped to co-organize Drupal Dev Days in Lisbon, which was amazing. This one was also pretty amazing. I like the parties here. Everybody liking the parties here also? Well done. I helped to organize also Drupal Europe, but because I was actually organizing Drupal Dev Days, my part in organizing Drupal Europe was basically the party. So I hope you enjoyed those. And I'm also like a scuba instructor, if anybody here is looking towards learning how to breathe underwater. It's pretty easy. You basically put a regulator on your mouse and you breathe. Nothing more to it. Just don't forget to breathe. That's the only thing. So we in the DevOps team at the moment, we're 4 persons. There's Stefan Weber, that is one of the founders of 1x together with Buddy. And then it's me, and then there's Denis Dmitriev, who is Ukrainian and is now a refugee in Germany, but he was already working for us before, and he actually at one point wanted to go to Germany, but he was living a perfectly good life in Ukraine, and this was not the way he wanted to leave Ukraine. So I'm wearing a t-shirt from Drupal Camp Kyiv, actually given to me by his brother that works with us at 1x Internet since a long time and is one of our senior developers. Looking forward to going to Kyiv again for a Drupal camp. And then we have, well, this is like a fighter pilot. Huh? He's got a call sign. So we've got a friend called, a colleague called Francisco Sanchez. We call him Curro because we have a problem. There's too many Franciscos in our company. So we kind of need to separate each one. So, and we have a lot of projects that we need to take care of. So we have this Drupal 6 multisite from the very early client of 1x Internet. They probably, the time I'm here speaking about them is probably already spending more than they pay us per year, maybe. And then we have several Drupal 7 projects, which will keep being Drupal 7 projects for a long, long time. We have a few Drupal 8 projects that are mostly depending on the clients approving the upgrade, because even though Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 upgrade is really, really easy, it still takes a few days to do. Like, you need to upgrade modules. Sometimes you actually need to go and co-maintain modules so that you can upgrade. And we have several Drupal 9 projects, which is what we're doing now, and eventually Drupal 10 sites. So what are our objectives at DevOps? We want to keep our colleagues, our developers, our project managers, we want to keep them happy. Hopefully, at the same time, the clients are happy. But honestly, that's the job of Buddy. And the project managers. So we want to give them the best tools that they can focus on their work and not having to struggle installing sites, deinstalling sites, and debugging their local installs. And so for that, we want to leverage that projects have commonality. And we want to be like, I forgot his name, not Moss. We want to be like this guy and basically just lay back and enjoy our time and just put out fires whenever the fires come out, which is probably most of what's happening every day. So why GitLab? So before GitLab, we had like a hodgepodge of stuff. So we had the setup from Atlassian. We were using Jira. We were using Bitbucket. And well, stuff worked, but it wasn't really well integrated. And we were using Jenkins, which was, well, we had like each project had its own Jenkins setup. And we were using like a skeleton of how to create a new project in Jenkins. But then as time went by, like the old projects had the initial version of our Jenkins scripts, the new projects had a much newer and better version of the Jenkins scripts, and we didn't have a way to easily know what was running where. And it was, in the end, it was a bit ugly because a lot of it was like spaghetti scripts that one script was just for that client and couldn't really be taken out and used in another. And nowadays we have a self-hosted community edition of GitLab. We're pretty happy with that. So we can do issues directly in GitLab. We have webhooks that integrate our spend command directly with our timekeeping system that we built ourselves. What else? It also has wiki pages, so that documentation for a project is inside each Git repo. There's the CI, there's the package repository. So there's a lot of things that are easy to find out about a project. So mostly everything about a project resides within the project. We also take advantage of groups. So a client that has multiple projects with us, all their projects are grouped in the same group. So it's easy to see stuff like, so who's our client contact? That's in the wiki page for the group. For a given project, which are the specifics, then these can go in the wiki pages of the specific project, and it really simplifies life a lot. So, onboarding developers. Like, I've been in companies where onboarding would usually mean there's 2 days allocated for a new person to come into a project, because that's the time they're going to take to be able to git pull, run, set up the system to them, get the database, get the files, get everything ready, and that they are ready to start working on something. Problem with that, of course, is are they able to then do like a fast switch over to another project? Not so easy, right? I mean, I'm in DevOps. I work on basically all the projects in 1X. If I took 3 hours to switch between projects, I would be unable to do anything. Like sometimes I've got in DDEV open 5 or 6 projects, and I'm working on them all at the same time. So, and the other thing, of course, is, for instance, people, and I usually like that, to have my own local environment. How can you have like a representative environment of the client if you're using your own system? Like, we have clients that are in PHP 5.6 because they're running Drupal 6. We have clients that are, a lot of them, in PHP 7.4 because we're still validating a lot of the modules for being able to run on PHP 8.1. We have the new clients already running on PHP 8.1. And if I were switching between projects and having to switch my own install of PHP, that would be crazy. And then there's stuff like versions of Elastic, versions of Solar, versions of MySQL or Maria, and we try to keep those all together with what's running on the client on the client's production server, so that if there's a bug, then it's a bug that should be happening also in the client server, and vice versa. Something that's running on production and it's happening on production should be able to be seen in the local environment. And this kind of removes the runs on my machine problem, which probably everybody has already had here. Like, this works fine on my machine. Why doesn't it run on the client? And then you find out like the version of MySQL on the client is got like this setting that it's not exactly the same as yours or whatever. So yeah, we don't want to be the frustrated monkey over there. So what about local development environments, and why did we choose DDEV? So we were considering at the time lots of them, Lando, DDEV, others. To be honest, the real choice was between Lando and DDEV. I personally liked Lando a lot. One thing I liked about Lando is it was less Drupal centric. It's got origins on more communities, so it can even from what I remember, a lot of people outside of Drupal are using it in purely non-PHP setups even. So that was one thing I liked about it. The other thing I loved about it was the recipes. It was just so easy to get something like Elasticsearch or Solar running on it. In DDEV, until the latest version, 1.19, if you wanted to get Solar memcached running on your DDEV, you basically had to go into a repo, you had to copy the files manually into your system, and then you had to configure, probably. And that's the one thing I love about the newest version of DDEV 1.19 is you can just do DDEV get something. We'll look at it later. So one thing I really want to say, if your company is using DDEV, and you should consider really sponsoring Randy. Quick plug, if those that don't know, the company that used to be behind DDEV is no longer behind DDEV. Randy is basically just freelancing now, and the whole DDEV package is basically him and some open source contributors, but the buzz factor really is almost one. So he needs all the help that he can have in being able to pay his bills and to support DDEV, so that he doesn't have to stop working on DDEV, and then we would all have to start looking at Lando again. So we are sponsors of DDEV, and I would encourage everyone else to do the same. So DDEV, what did we get with DDEV? So with DDEV, it's basically the way we set up our projects, and we'll look at a bit at the project setup later on. To get a developer onboarded in a project is just that. So you do git pull, you do DDEV start, you synchronize the database with that drush SQL sync with 2 aliases. The aliases will be there in a project because we build the projects like that. So, and they all are like that, so that a developer usually doesn't have to go and look at which alias is the one that's applicable to my project. Maybe not 100% of the time, but 99 for sure. And then we've got that custom command to enable stage file proxy and pass it on one of the aliases, so that the stage file proxy command module is initialized with the values that are applicable to a given alias, and that so that you don't need to configure it separately. The one thing is we need to keep everyone at the same tool level. This used to be quite annoying at first, before actually I complained to Randy about it, that every time that you ran DDEV config, it changed the value of, I think it was like something like API value of the config YAML. And basically that meant that if a developer worked on it using the latest version, they would get a warning, or their colleagues that were using the previous version would get a warning that the config was from a newer version. And honestly, it never made any sense because it wasn't really changing anything. So that went away. Nowadays, you don't get warnings, but still it can, if you are using the latest nifty features in your config file and your colleagues are still on the old one, can lead to problems. So you kind of need to unify across the companies. At one point say, hey, everyone upgrade now to 1.19.1. The other thing I would like to say about that is try to wait for the .1, because the .0 sometimes have bugs, and you do not want that your whole production's capability goes away by everyone having the same problem. And this happened when was it? Like at one point there was, because we are running drush so much, but we were building for some weird reason, we had drush we had the bin directory in Composer, not inside vendor. We had it outside. And DDEV was expecting that drush would be inside vendor bin. So basically, when he deployed that version, all our projects stopped working. So it was fun, and we had to tell everyone, please roll back, which is pretty easy if you're doing the install scripts for installing DDEV. If you're running this spawn of the devil called homebrew, it is really hard to go back to a previous version, honestly. Like, it's one of the reasons why I do not like Mac, because, to be honest, spending so much time to turn your computer into a Linux, might as well just start with a Linux. So what are we doing at 1X? So we have a lot of hosting systems to which we deploy. We have our own 1X hosting. I don't know if we give it a product name. Okay. Then we have Acquia. Then we have Pantheon. We have some clients in AWS. We even have clients on their own weird thing. Some of them want a Docker container. Some others want some weird low-cost hosting provider somewhere in Switzerland, because laws. And they're like, you can see they're like casinos, but still the hosting is like this really crappy hosting. So, and we have like tons of several versions of Drupal, 7, 8, 9, 6. The 6, actually, we don't have a way to deploy Drupal 6 on CI. So Drupal 6 is like still old school. You need to go into the machine and do git pull, and then you have it. And then you have, and then for each system, each project, we have 3 different systems, usually like tests and stage and production. And now later on, I'll talk about Tugboat. Nowadays, we even have like environments for each merge request. And all of this needs to be as simple as possible. So how do we keep all of this really, really simple? Because we want to be the laid back guy that doesn't have to be in front of every project. What we want when our colleagues deploy to production is that they don't even call us. They just merge to a specific branch, or in some of the more refined projects, they tag a specific version, and it gets committed over and deployed, and they only call us when something goes wrong, which happens, unfortunately, kind of often. Well, not often, but happens just about every week on one project or another, because config or the internet is down or whatever. So for creating a project, we have this, this is basically the few steps when one of us needs to create a new project for a client. So we go create a project out of our core Composer project, which is our product, some other stuff. Then we go into the directory, and we do DDEV config with the versions that we expect that the client will have. So if it's on one of the 1X hosting that we would deploy a project now, it would be PHP 8.1, MariaDB 10.4. If the client says we're going to do Acquia Cloud, then we basically go into Acquia Cloud and ask Acquia Cloud which version of MySQL they are running, which I think it's 5.7 at the moment. And we set up PHP to 8.1, and then we use, instead of MariaDB, MySQL. Then if we need Elasticsearch, you can run ddev get drud ddev Elasticsearch, and that's the new thing about recipes that ddev has, which is just amazing. I'm really, really happy with that. Then, well, you set up some settings local, you push into the teams directory and you run this build script. This build script is also something that I would recommend. It's one of the leveraging the commonality. So we have a lot of, we actually have two technologies that we used over the last few years behind front end. So Pattern Lab with Particle and now Web Components on something called Granite. But the build sh script is there, and it kind of takes away the specifics on how you build the team. So our front-enders have that script that they create, they manage, and that script, when run, should be able to start from zero and end up with a fully built team. That's their responsibility to manage. We will call it, and we expect that when we deploy it to the production, that the team is going to be there after running that. And then you can do the site install to get a database on the site, etc., etc. So this is mostly what we have to do when creating a project, nothing much more. After this step, we start committing, and it will already be ready with everything because of kind of the skeleton of this project that we just created. So stuff that's there automatically out of the box, like the GitLab CI YAML, of which I'll show in a bit what we have in there. Composer JSON, that's basically a copy of the Drupal recommended project one, with including our DXP stuff, including like patches, the require dev, because require dev is not something that you can actually require from the root composer JSON into the profile one. Then we have the drush commands there. There's only two at global level. The one that prevents you from doing SQL sync to overwrite the live database. Of course, we're all PHP developers, and we all know how to open that file and how to comment the line that actually prevents you from doing that. But I mean, at that point, you're doing it on purpose. So, and I actually do this. I go there and I comment out that line because when I start a project, I actually want to be able to overwrite live. But there's no way that there's no funny command line option to do that without actually going in and commenting the line. Then we have this stage file proxy command, which is the one that reads the drush SQL alias and configures automatically stage file proxy with what's in the alias. Drush YAML that sets like the cache structures already to what we want to have, like ignoring the cache tables. We also have something funny in there because you probably know from when running drush that if you don't set up the base URL correctly, that everything is going to be default. And then when you run drush ULI, the ULI, the HTTP is going to be HTTPS default, and then the user login, user reset, and a hash with the token. And what we do in that drush YAML is actually to include a file that sits outside the project directory. And when we provision a new environment, we already set up in that environment, which is the URL that server is going to be running on. So automatically, when a project is finally deployed and you run drush, you will not get default anywhere because of that include there. Self-site is the example is very simple on how to then set up for our normal case, how to set up the live and stage and test aliases correctly. What's more there? Then we have some stuff in services YAML. So in our DXP product, we use the persistent login module, and it warns every time that the cookie lifetime is not set to 0. So we set that up to 0. by default on all projects that we install. But we also have like an example with the cookie lifetime set to 0, but with also all the other stuff on how to enable twig debug and the template debug and everything else to so that our developers, if they want to turn on all these features, they don't have to go and comment stuff. They can just copy from example over to services YAML and stuff just works. We actually have a DDEV command that that people install in their. That's another thing, but we came up with a command that they can run, and it will do this for them, replacing the services YAML with the example one, so that from that moment on they can debug the theme easily. So that's the whole structure of the project skeleton. There's nothing more in there. There's like 1 or 2 more text files that for simplicity reasons I removed. But this is what we have in a project skeleton. The CI is where we have the simplicity also. Is this so mostly our CI is like this. So we have the 2 different stages there, install and deploy, that you can see. On install, it's a bit more complicated than that, because we also run with ignore platform recs, and we run it with PHP memory limit equals to -1, because sometimes the runner simply doesn't. This was a bit more common with Composer 1, but sometimes the runner simply doesn't have memory to run Composer install. So we kind of want it to run with infinite memory. Again, like this should run, and we should be able to lay back and not have our colleagues call us, why didn't the Composer install run, not run this time? And we were like, well, it would run out of memory. I have no idea why it ran out of memory this time and not the previous times, but today was the day for out of memory error. So, but basically it's Composer install. And then deploy to live, it's actually like that, okay? That one I'm not simplifying anything. So we extend Drupal 8 deploy, and I wanna show you a bit what that means. Then we set some variables, and in this case we set that the environment is live. We also have some stuff that controls how each deployment is really going to happen. The ones to live, we actually set this flag to create a backup, and that means before deploying, take the time to create a backup, because if stuff goes to hell, we want to have the files and we want to have the latest database just prior to the backup. Even though we do daily backups anyway, offline, this one will create a backup together with on the system that's being deployed. So if you need to revert, then it's pretty easy. Okay. So and then that environment one there is just that inside GitLab UI, you actually have like, there's a part there, a page with environments, and you can click that and go to the real URL. So I don't know if I'll have a lot of time to show, but the idea that I wanted to show, and this is, it's actually the wrong one, or not. Okay, so I wanted to go to gitlab.com, 1x internet. So this is, why did it go to git 1x? Oh, come on. This is the reason why it's not gitlab.com, 1x internet. And here you have, so we have, when we did that includes back in the project specific GitLab CI, we have 2 versions, so D7, D8, and then we have this mirror, which is something specific for a case that we have. And D7 is obviously for Drupal 7. D8 was an unfortunate naming because this just works with Drupal 8, Drupal 9, Drupal 10. So I should have called it Drupal better. or something. And this one, like, it starts with all the stuff that you can configure. So like the default stuff, like Drupal pass can also be doc root. So if you wanted to install in doc root, you'd set Drupal pass to doc root and stuff like that. And then there's this is where the default variables are set. And as I said, we kind of tend to run everything with memory limit -1, and that forces you to use a lot of stuff. So I wanted to replace that and not have that verbose everywhere. And deploy is basically like starts from an artifact that it uploads, and then it starts by untarring the artifact, doing the backup, creating some symlinks, and making sure that private needs to be there, and then you archive the old artifact, clear some caches. Then there's this thing that switches the archived version with the new version. And at the end, if it ran, actually no, sorry. So here is, we test if Drupal is installed. If it's not installed, then we switch what we are trying to install with the archived version, so that you can immediately go back to something that's running. And if it's alive, then you continue by activating it. And this is the part where, so the funny part here, why are we doing drush deploy by basically running these 5 commands, which is what drush deploy runs? Because out of memory. Like this way, it doesn't go into out of memory. And if you run it all together by just running drush deploy, eventually it triggers a lot more out of memory errors. So that's it. This is, everyone can use this, and I would really enjoy if anyone would be interested in looking at it and using it for their own things and helping us to improve it. Like the URL is that one, gitlab.com, 1x internet, GitLab CI common. Feel free to look at it and suggest improvements for us. I'm pretty sure there's things that we can do better. And if you want to use it for your own cases, fine. The one thing I would say there that we haven't really unified is how to build a website, even though we are halfway there, because it's basically composer install and the build sh of the Steam. So what else do we have that we love about GitLab CI? We love GitLab CI being able to create composer packages. Nowadays, instead of using repo, git, and then the .git URL, we basically specify that composer, a group of packages, and we have that script in each module that we have. We don't have many modules only in our specific GitLab. Most of the modules that we do are on Drupal.org, but the ones that we do have on our GitLab we build them like this. That's the script basically, and it will create either on tags or for each commit on a branch, the dev version. If you do this with private repos though, and then you give them to a client to build somewhere, you will need to then add a read-only token to your repo, so that the composer running on the client's computer can go into your GitLab instance or GitLab account and actually read that. So if you want to do this kind of stuff, think about setting up repos that are not going to be shared with other clients, because the token, or you create a token for each single client. But even then, there should not be anything in the group that other clients can look into. What else do we have that we love? So this is not actually open source. Sometimes we don't use open source when there's really no alternative. So this is a product by Tugboat, is a product by Lulabot that is pretty impressive. It creates an environment for each merge request that we have. the way we build base previews basically daily. We don't copy the files because we also use stage 5 proxy from there. And we use a sanitized daily backup from the client side to initialize the base preview. And for each merge request, you automatically get like another preview. And the moment that this went on, the 1X projects manager were, yay, finally. It also has integrated visual regression testing, which is amazing as well. I think only in the paid version. So if you use the free version, tough luck. And we use this actually, and this was something that used to be in our common GitLab, and it's still there. When you go back in Git history, you will see the whole really complicated setup that we had to do this by CI, but it's much easier with Tugboat because this one is already building environments with databases that it knows how to get. And so this one is something that we run every Thursday morning, early morning. So as you know, security updates on Drupal only come every Wednesday. So what does it do every Thursday morning? Into each project that we have an SLA to fix them, the security updates, it takes the base preview, runs drush PM security, that tells us which modules / projects need to be updated. It runs composer update for those projects. Then it does drush updb, and then it exports also the configuration. Why do we need this? Because when we deploy, we are going to import configuration. And this is like the problem with automated updates. If you're using drush deploy, every time that you deploy a production site and you actually have configuration, and if you just run composer update to fix security updates, then you import the configuration, the updb that ran before is probably going to be overwritten with the configuration that you did not change. This has been the one challenge for us on how do we get the exported configuration after running the composer update for the security update. So Tugboat helped us to solve that very easily, and we're really happy with it. It's even it does also lighthouse tests, yes. So other open source tools that we use, deploy in Acquia, we use BLT so that we don't have to deal with the whole REST API of Acquia. We use Terminus for exactly the same reason on Pantheon. We use SonarQube to check for code quality. We monitor all our sites with Zabbix and visualization on Grafana. We automate deploying stuff across like if we want to switch all our projects PHP version from 7.1 to 8.0 or 8.1, we use basically Ansible AWX that has a list of sites that we are maintaining, and the scripts will basically go into each site and do what we ask them. So we have scripts for updating PHP, doing backups, etc., etc. There's a thing called Pastillon, which we use for SSH key management. And then we use Drupal for knowledge management on something called Playbook. And it's actually running Drupal 9 already, and it's one of the easier ones to configure because it's basically just Drupal and paragraphs and stuff. So that was it. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to thank the Platinum sponsors, Calibrate and Drop Solid, every other sponsor that I'm not going to name, and any questions?
Right.
Yay.
Cool. So thanks. You mentioned you got your self-hosted GitLab instance.
Yep.
What can it do that just cloud GitLab cannot do?
To be honest, not sure. Like the cloud GitLab, if you have your own instance, basically you have your own users, you control it a lot better.
Yeah.
It's also like if GitLab.com decides to change something, then you're not subject to their latest policies. What I can say regarding what for instance a fully paid enterprise edition can do that the community edition cannot do, that annoys me a bit, is the fact that the community edition can only do push mirroring and cannot do pull mirroring. So that means that when we mirror a site with a client, commits to our repo can be easily pushed to their repo, but we can't really do that the client is changing their repo and we pull it periodically into ours. So that's not there. On the other end, with every client that we have, the main repository is the one that we have in our self-hosted instance, and then we push over to their repo if for some clients that need it for security reasons or policy reasons that they want to own the code. So that also simplifies our life because our developers don't need to know about the external GitLab repos. They just know about ours.
Cool.
Bitbucket, the same thing, we use that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hope that
Cool.
answered.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Jacob?
Over there.
So you mentioned that you use Tugboat, which runs on the sanitized version of the database. Do you run into problems with like production database, even sanitized, being to the size that it's very inefficient to run a Tugboat? Because I mean, it can take ages to set up the preview environment, or I don't know, maybe you're just running into the database
We do
constraints.
run.
And
So
what do you do in this case?
Lulabot is very happy with us because we have like a very high license nowadays, because we have so many projects there, and then we have some clients which have databases that are containing some data that really should not be in any version anymore, but so really old orders from clients, something that definitely could be switched over to some glacial tables, some glacial table backups or whatever, and that the site is not so slow, because honestly, even their site gets slow by having Drupal commerce iterate on databases that are 20 gigabytes of orders. And no one is interested in such old orders anyway. But so for those clients, yes, it does take a long time. We don't notice it though, because the one thing that Tugboat does that's nice is it builds the previews sometime during the night, and then when we do a merge request, the database from the preview is the one that gets used on the preview for the merge request. So that's like a clone that gets done almost instantly, and then it will run the update to get the newest code and run drush updb to make sure that the database that's on the merge request preview is the one that you want it to be. But we don't notice like delays. That's what we do notice. For instance, when we are running the automatic updates, is that Tugboat cannot keep up with us, because we are launching like 50 or something not merge requests, but previews, preview builds in at the same time, and Tugboat doesn't like that at all.
Thank you. I have a question. How do you maintain and roll out enhancements to the skeleton project?
So the skeleton, as you see, is pretty basic, and one thing that we did recently with the version 1.19 of DDEV was we had the Docker Compose files for Elastic and Solar in our skeleton. Those got removed now because we can just use DDEV get for those services. We used to tag them as versions, but we discovered that that we don't really use the versions on that. So the thing that happens also is we don't really need to update the skeleton on existing projects because it's so minimal on one end. The one thing that happened recently that we do have to update was when we switched between Drupal 8 and Drupal 9, that the stage file proxy command that we had before had a module that we were excluding from the configuration, and that was like config exclude or something like that, and that we needed to remove that out of the. I can't exactly remember why that is in the stage file proxy, but it is, and we removed it at that time, so that every Drupal 9 project needs to get the updated version of that file. That's the only annoyance there. Rodrigo?
Thank you. So I'm curious about the mimicking on DDEV of the production environments. You mentioned that you try to imitate the versions of PHP, MariaDB, but for example, in your own hosting, you use the same images, or until one point you try to run the same software on production and DDEV?
So unfortunately, our hosting is not Docker-based. That's something. And I don't think it will ever be Docker-based if we move it out of the current. So it's currently VM-based. So we have Robohost, which is our provider, and they give us some machines that they can spin up VMs inside that. So we own the metal, and they are responsible for taking care of the servers in the server room, and they also do the sysadministration of the host. And they create new virtual machines on that host for us, delete the ones that we don't want, etc., etc. And it's all still virtual machine based. These machines we found out are pretty good. We have had clients move out of our machines and into Acquia or something. I can't remember. Well, some of the good hostings, and the site got slower when it moved out of our host. So. And we noticed it, so it was like, wow, we need to really thank Robohost for optimizing the configuration on the VMs that they built for us. Yes, it does come with some maintenance overhead because like we have to ask them, hey, because there's like a golden image that they use as the base template when they spin up a new VM for us, and we need to ask them, hey, please add Solar to the golden image. Or add version PHP 8.1 now. And
so it's something that is not controlled from the repository?
No.
Okay.
But then the thing that we do here is like when we now switch over to PHP 8.1, we need to tell developers, hey, when you work on a project, please go into config YAML of your project and update the line that says PHP so that DDEV is no longer in version 7.4, which is the one probably now, and it starts using 8.1. The same for Tugboat config, although that one is a bit different because that one is kind of controlled on a more central based. But yeah, I mean, there's also a way that you specify the specific version in the local project, and that one should be changed at the same time, yes, if it's there.
That's it. Thank you.
I think that's it. So no idea why it's written hard eye in there. So thank you a lot